If you have pancreatic cancer and you have the FGFR gene mutation in the cancer, this clinical trial and treatment is the right one for you.
This is the James Cancer-Free World podcast. I'm Steve Wartenberg, and my guest is Dr. Sameek Roychowdhury. Sameek is a physician scientist and a leader in creating innovative and new ways to look at, understand, and treat cancer. Today we'll talk about a brand new clinical trial Sameek and his lab have created here at the James, and it's the world's first telemedicine clinical trial. It's for a rare form of pancreatic cancer that has a specific genetic mutation, and this trial could be the first step and way of using telemedicine to create a series of clinical trials for multiple types of cancer and lead to better outcomes for people around the country with rare forms of cancer who might otherwise never have access to a clinical trial. Welcome to the podcast, Sameek. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
So we've talked a little bit in the past about that genetic mutation you discovered and how that led to some an initial clinical trial. So fill us in on the science that's the foundation of what you're doing now.
Yeah, so the target that we can treat in cancer that we've been studying is the fibroblast growth factor receptor, or FGFR. And to initially kind of study that, we've been conducting trials where we offer a smart drug that targets the FGFR gene and turns it off and sort of takes away that gene and signal so we can slow cancer's growth down and make it even shrink. And we've been doing that through basket trials. Baskets are when we combine cancer types together in a clinical trial, but instead of treating them based on their cancer type, we're really targeting the gene, right? And so the gene is the focus. So as long as you have an FGFR gene mutation, you could qualify for treatment in this basket trial.
No matter what type of cancer you had, lung cancer,
That's right.
Pancreatic cancer.
Right. The commonality is the target, right? So instead of a organ-based approach, meaning did it come from the lung or breast, it's a genetic-based approach to personalized treatment. And we find that when we can go after a target in someone's cancer, we're more likely to have benefit, but those trials do better. And we're also more likely to reduce side effects by staying away from drugs that are not going to give benefit. And so this is sort of the concept of precision oncology. Treat the target, not just the type of cancer.
Now with your trial, with the basket trial, how did you do that? What happened?
Well, one of the things that we learned in this basket is that there are certain kinds of cancer that have FGFR alterations that can do well. One of those is a type of liver cancer called cholangiocarcinoma or bile duct cancer. And now there are drugs approved for that specific type of liver cancer with FGFR. However, we also learned there are other cancers that could benefit, and we don't yet have drugs approved in them. And one of those cancer types is pancreatic cancer. And so years ago, when I met the first patient with pancreatic cancer, I thought, oh gosh, this is really rare. That patient did well. And then 3 patients later, over the years, we now have treated 4 patients in our basket trials. And when I talk to people across the country who specialize in pancreas cancer, they may have seen none, right? So it was clear that this
pancreatic patients with the FGFR mutation.
That's right. Pancreas cancer with FGFR. So one, these patients were doing really well. You know, pancreas cancer is a disease where even with the best chemotherapy we have, you know, patients may live somewhere between 8 months as an average. So that could be as little as months or as little as, you know, a few more months than that. And those patients with an FGFR mutation that could qualify for an FGFR inhibitor in one of our trials, they did quite well. They lived anywhere from 2.5 to 5.5 years with treatments. And so very impressive, a good opportunity to help more patients with pancreatic cancer. But how do we get this out there? How do we get more patients access to this type of treatment when it's so rare?
But wait, when you say when it's so rare, how rare is it to have pancreatic cancer with the FGFR mutation?
Yeah, whenever I talk to pancreas cancer experts, most of them say they have not met a patient with an FGFR mutation. We estimate, based on an analysis of over 30,000 pancreatic tumors that we did in collaboration with a company called Foundation Medicine, that around 1.5% will have some type of FGFR mutation leading to activation that could then be a target for an FGFR smart drug. For 1.5% of the 67,000 patients with pancreas cancer diagnosed a year.
About 1,000, right?
Around 1,000.
Okay.
And yeah.
So traditionally, that rare of a cancer, a national clinical trial at 20, 30 or more cancer centers probably wouldn't happen.
That would be challenging for a lot of reasons. So if you think about the traditional clinical trial structure and approach, as well as cost, I think trying to tackle pancreas cancer at 1.5% could be challenging. The first reason is they're rare. And so if you were going to find patients across the country to participate, you really have to have a very broad net. And so if a drug company tried to do this, they might need to open the trial at 60 plus locations in the country. And that would be very costly. And each of these locations, wherever they are, patients, if they're found, have to travel to those locations. So let's say we have a clinical trial in Columbus, Ohio, but you live in West Virginia. Well, you'll have to travel all the way to Columbus.
Because that's the closest place with the clinical trial.
That's the closest place. And you have to come here for all the visits, all the scans, all the blood work, all the additional tests like ophthalmology exams. So a lot of burden on patients to do this. And so it's not easy to travel 3 hours for a clinical trial.
And you're sick and not feeling well. And
yeah, staying in a hotel overnight, and people have to take time off from work. People have to miss, other appointments, and loved ones have to come with the patient. So there's a lot of cost for patients to be part of a trial 3 hours away.
So there's cost for patients, and then also the cost to run the trials. And those two things together mean that rare types of cancers rarely get big clinical trials.
That could cost more than $20 million to do a trial like that. And, usually for drug companies, that's just not a good investment for them, to get a return on their investment. At the same time, when I use those words investment, we're talking about people with pancreatic cancer who are suffering, who need an opportunity to have more time and treat their cancer and live longer. So how do we, solve this problem? The current traditional trial approach is not going to do it.
So that's the fascinating thing that I've gotten to know about you over the years is you're not going to just say we can't open this big national trial. Me and my team, we have to figure something out. So, and I understand COVID was an impetus in helping you to figure this out.
Yeah, so we all experienced COVID, and it was rough. There were some important lessons and positive sides of getting through COVID. One of those was the, broader use of telehealth, telemedicine services, because that sort of reduced that exposure risk, but also allowed people to not have to travel. And so we still use telemedicine today, now, 5 years later, for routine visits, even, a follow-up for symptoms, a follow-up for pain, a quick check-in about a result, counseling, even exercise therapy, counseling can happen, nutrition counseling. So we use it a lot still. And I think there's been a desire for this to come to clinical trials. And so every major organization is wanting to see this, but it hadn't happened yet. And, in our own experience, the first week of the COVID shutdown in March of 2020, I had a new referral for a patient with advanced endometrial cancer, and she had an FGFR mutation. And she was being sent to me for one of our FGFR basket trials. Could I qualify her? Could we treat her? And at that point, everything was just shut down. We just weren't doing things. Don't come to the office. Right. Don't come do this. You can't enroll patients. So I applied for permission from our cancer center and hospital leadership. I said, hey, I filled out a letter. I want to proceed with this patient, and I want your permission to do it. And I got permission.
Permission to do it via telemed.
To evaluate the patient and do as much as we could by telehealth. And so we did her informed consent, where we talked about the risks and benefits of the study, got her signature, we got her CAT scans, we got her blood work. She went for an ophthalmology exam. She got an EKG. She even got an echocardiogram. In this particular study, we had all those things. We qualified her as being eligible. We shipped her drug in the mail. Normally, you would dispense it in person with a bag of pills, or a pill bottle in a bag. But we just shipped it to her. She started treatment, and we eventually saw her for the first time as things changed during the pandemic. 6 weeks later, when we met her for the first time ever, we hugged, and we were both grateful that we could move on with the trial. She continued to benefit. Her tumor shrunk she maybe benefited for a little more than 2 years for a disease that was not responding to standard treatments for metastatic uterus cancer. She unfortunately, had a stroke for other reasons and passed away. But that stuck with me, her experience and being able to offer her a trial that she needed. She needed a therapy for FGFR. And so that was, 5 years ago. And in the past 5 years, we've had this observation in pancreatic cancer. And so now it's time to connect the dots, right? So can we do telemedicine for pancreatic cancer with FGFR, but not just in Ohio? The boundary doesn't have to stop there. It can just be the entire nation.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, you're going to tell us about the process over the past 3-4 years of making this happen, because I'm guessing that it was probably more complicated than just doing it.
The best outcomes for treating cancer come from early detection and early diagnosis.
The James Cancer Diagnostic Center at Ohio State
is designed to provide rapid evaluation and a clear diagnosis.
We are transforming care by giving patients direct access
to cancer experts who study and treat cancer every day.
If you think you have cancer, the choice is clear.
Choose the James Cancer Diagnostic Center.
We're back with Sameek, and you gave us a great overview of what got you up to the point of where the light bulb went off, and that we, meaning you and your lab, can create a telemed clinical trial for people with pancreatic cancer with the FGFR mutation. So how do you go from idea to the actual clinical trial, which you have now started?
Yeah, so to do a clinical trial, we need an approach, how we're going to do it. We need funding, and we need to make it happen. And so the first thing we decided was that we would focus on pancreatic cancer, great unmet need. We had 4 patients where we could show that we had success and people did really well. And we identified which FGFR mutations, about 1.5%. We did the research to figure out which ones could qualify our patients. So now we knew who would be part of the trial.
Not literally the names of the people, but which types of cancer they had.
So who could they be? We needed to find those patients.
Yes,
so how are we going to do that? And then we needed to make the trial available nationwide with telemedicine. And so to find the patients and make it available, we've done a number of things. First, patients are getting tested with genetic testing everywhere. So we need to work with the companies who do the majority of that diagnostic testing. So we've partnered with at least 3 companies to help us identify patients and asking them to contact, which they do, physicians where they have found a patient with the FGFR mutation. we also need to reach oncologists. So we're working on strategies nationwide to let people know that our trial exists. So part of that includes networking with some of the large community oncology practices across the country. There are several that can have reaches of 20 plus states with over 250 providers. So really large oncology practices. And it's important to remember that the majority of cancer care happens in the community with amazing doctors, but they don't have a lot of clinical trials available to them. It's very costly to have a trial in a community practice. You need a lot of infrastructure and people power, although academic cancer centers do just that. So how do we bridge academic medicine where we're churning out these great ideas in clinical trials, but people can't access them? And so we want to make sure our community oncologists, again, we're networking with each of them. We're basically reaching out to the research leads at all these networks and saying, you need to put our trial on your watch list, and we're going to come back to you with a monthly newsletter to give you updates, make sure you're aware, and we're going to offer you more trials down the road as well, beyond the one we're offering now. And it's not going to cost you anything, right? You can just let us do the work. You can have the opportunity. You can have this available for your doctors. We'll do the work. We'll share this with you. There's no extra paperwork. There's no more red tape that you have to do. It's just available, right? It's a new way of thinking about having access to trials because, again, in a normal practice in the community, they might have 0 trials or they might have 20. But they're not going to have this array of trials that we're offering.
But you say a new way of thinking about trials, and anytime there's a new way, it takes a lot of education, and you might have to break through some barriers of resistance.
Yeah, so there is an inertia for how we do clinical trials. And so over the past 2.5 years, we've written a study. We've described in the study how things are going to happen. So how are we going to consent patients? How are we going to assess their side effects? How are we going to manage the dose of the medication? How are we going to get their CAT scans and get the data to Columbus, Ohio? How are we going to get their blood work? How are we going to get their research blood work and bring it to Ohio State? How are we going to coordinate care with the local oncologist? How are we going to get eye exams? The list goes on. So all of that is really well described and documented in our study. And then at every step of sort of the regulatory process for developing a trial, that includes a clinical scientific review at Ohio State. It includes a FDA review. It includes a internal review board, or IRB. At all those steps, we've carefully explained how we do things. We've gotten very good questions. Those questions have actually improved our process. And so we had now finally opened this trial as of May of this year.
Meaning the FDA has approved it.
Yep.
And all the boards here at the James
That's
have
right.
approved it.
Yeah, we've opened it on May 8th of 2025. We still consider this a prototype that we're going to learn from. Prototype doesn't mean it's not ready. Prototype in my mind is this is what we're doing, and we've thought through very carefully, but we are open to learning more. And we're going to learn more as we see the first patients.
The prototype is telemed, but the actual treatment is not a prototype. That's
exactly,
a proven...
All right, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of evidence and a lot of safety data. We know how this drug works. We've had 10 plus years of experience with FGFR drugs and smart drugs. And so we know exactly what's going to happen with our patients, what side effects they can have, how we're going to manage it. And that actually probably lends itself to being a little more practical for us to do this as the first telemedicine study, because we happen to be experts on both the disease of pancreatic cancer and the class of drug. So this is sort of the perfect storm for us to pull off the first nationwide telemedicine therapeutic clinical trial for cancer. And again, I still consider this something we're going to learn from. And all along the way, we plan to improve on our processes in terms of operations. So how do we, deliver this trial? I think FGFR and pancreatic cancer is sort of the traditional research innovation, meaning it's a good target. I think what we're doing with telemedicine trials is sort of an operational innovation, if that makes sense, right? So we're disrupting
administrative
clinical
however you wanna-
trials. We're disrupting clinical
yeah.
trials. We can do things in a better way that's going to be more cost effective and have a wider reach. So instead of thinking about a trial with 50 locations with a $20 million price tag, it still has a limited reach when you're talking about a rare cancer subtype. We now have soil to soil, Atlantic Ocean to Pacific Ocean reach, right? We can go to Hawaii. And we've reduced the cost of the trial from $20 million to $2 million. And so I think we've disrupted not only the operations of how we do the trial, but we've also disrupted the cost of doing this trial. And this can really open doors for targets and cancer types that are rare, that we've been ignoring because it's just not feasible for us to make it happen from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm starting to understand, that for a rare cancer like this, there would not be a clinical trial. And I've heard you say a couple times this is the first one, meaning you're already probably planning more.
Yeah, so this is the first. We have 7 more targets that we can go after across cancer types. So these will be more broad, but they'll be focused on those targets.
That have FGFR.
Different targets than FGFR.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
7 different targets.
Yeah, over the past 10 years of precision oncology research, there have been many discoveries, but they're considered rare, right? When they're 1% or a few percent of a disease, and it's hard for the pharmaceutical industry to go after them. But now that we have the disruption in telemedicine, we can go after these rare targets in a cost-effective manner and make it happen. And so we're already working on developing these trials. We want to educate others and learn from others at the same time. And so one of the things we are doing is launching a investigator group about therapeutic telemedicine trials for cancer nationwide. And the purpose of this is first education. We want to share what we are doing. We want others to share what they are doing. We want to learn from this real world experience, and we want to support more clinical trials. We have others that we plan to develop. We want to help others do what we're doing. We don't want this to be unique to Ohio State. This should just permeate clinical trial.
Yeah, there's
processes.
so many rare cancers that you need everyone around the country
we
and world
can't do this
pitching
alone.
in.
So we want this to expand. So we want to support others in doing this. We also want to make sure we have a footprint for our trials. And so because we don't have a physical footprint, how do we make sure people know about it? So that's what this network's going to do. It's going to be a liaison to community oncology. It's going to be a liaison to diagnostics companies who test patients. It's going to be a liaison to comprehensive cancer centers. It's going to be a liaison to the pharmaceutical industry. So once they see what we're doing, I think it's really easy to get behind this, right? You can do things, you have a wider reach, reduce cost, and you can develop drugs for people who need it. And I think that's very easy to get behind for all of our stakeholders. We even have, plans for having our patients be advocates in this process. We already have an advocate for pancreatic cancer. They can drive research as well by making sure people know that it's needed for that population. The last thing I want to say about rare is that when we say rare, it's not that it's so rare that it's less than 1% of something. When you think about cancer, probably a third of cancers are rare when you bucket them all together.
Yeah,
so we're sort of ignoring a third of cancer, right? So, there are many rare cancers, but there are also rare subsets of a common cancer like pancreatic cancer, right? And so when you think about rare, we're really talking about a third of cancer. And so telemedicine can help us open the door to really approach those other third of cancers in a meaningful way. We can target certain alterations. We can develop it for a specific rare cancer type. Everything is possible.
Wow. So the whole concept is fascinating. And this idea that you're already working on 7 more clinical trials to do it for 7 different types of cancers is I mean, where are you going to get the energy and time?
I'm sure there's more than 7. 7 is what we have on our list
currently.
Yeah, but again, there's ideas in another cancer center in another university that I don't know about, and someone has observed it, and they thought, you know what, I can't get someone to fund me to do this trial. But once they see what's possible with these other trials, I think we're going to get a lot of gravity to come to this group, use telemedicine.
Well, this group, the idea of creating this group sounds like a very intelligent way to do it, to get more people involved. And how will it actually, what will the group consist of?
Yeah, so we're hoping to have representatives from all the NCI cancer centers. We want to have opportunities for community oncology networks to be part of it, the diagnostics companies to be part of it, the pharmaceutical industry to be part of it. We plan in the next year to have some virtual meetings and build up sort of towards 2026 in June for our American Society of Clinical Oncology international meeting, to have an in-person meeting there to bring everybody together. But between now and then, we're going to build that momentum, talk about key questions, talk about things that we need to solve. Maybe we'll have some best practices. Maybe we'll have a committee that can help other people develop their concepts. There's a lot we can do to make sure telemedicine gets everywhere.
Yeah, because you're not the only one. There's
Most
lots
certainly.
of people here at the James and around the country who are thinking like you're thinking and want to do something, but
We
have been
all want to
frustrated.
do telemedicine, yes, we do.
That have been frustrated, and you're giving hopefully people a way to make their ideas come to fruition.
And we've had tremendous support at the James from our clinical trials office. From a medical and administrative perspective, they've been incredibly supportive in problem solving how to do this, right? And so we're really grateful to have that. If we didn't have that, we might not be talking today, but we've been very well supported. I think our teams have been very open-minded and been willing to just come to the table and help us problem solve how to do this. So.
Wow. So yes, if you get support from above, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Look ahead 5, 10, 15 years. If all this works the way you envision it, what can happen? What can it be?
Well, I think being rare is no longer a barrier for drug development. And what that means is we're going to be able to develop more precision oncology treatments that we've sort of been ignoring, right? We've made discoveries, and up until now, we've sort of focused on the discoveries that affect a lot of people. And that limitation has really put a block on all these other discoveries that have been happening. And I think we'll see a lot of new therapy opportunities for either rare cancers or rare subtypes of common cancers. And I think we're going to move the needle in a big way. Again, when you have a precision oncology target, you're more likely to do well if you can match the patient to that. And I think up until now, our traditional clinical trial approach sort of is a barrier to go after rare targets. And I think overcoming that, I think we're going to see some outcomes where people benefit and people get more time with their loved ones, and we're all going to be better off.
Well, sounds like it's the next step in clinical trials, and you and your team are leading the way.
Well, we're looking forward to people joining us and sharing what they're doing and learning from one another. So we definitely want to help lead the way, but we know there's others who are going to help us make this happen.
Well, thank you for filling us in. This is really, I think, groundbreaking, and it's going to hopefully change the way people are treated and lead to more and better outcomes. And I appreciate you filling us in.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, Arthur G. James Cancer Hospital, and Richard J. Solove Research Institute. For more information, check out our website, cancer.osu.edu.